People like labels because they're terrified of uncertainty. That's really it. If you can define it and put a label on it, then you know what it is and you don't have to worry about figuring out what it's going to do or how it's going to be. You can put it in the box and you can be comfortable. Part of why we're so terrified of the unknown is because we've forgotten how to create. We have forgotten that we are these incredibly powerful beings living this human story, and when we forget how we create, and I would say when we forget that the universe is good, when we forget that what happens to us, the potential of what happens to us can be inherently part of the activation of our potential, it can be abundant and it can teach us. When we forget that there is a universe that can be organized by our thoughts and our being, when we forget our creative power, then we get terrified. Because we think we're victims of our reality instead of co-creating with source or the universe or whatever you want to call it, the quantum field. When we get connected to that remembering of our creativity and our creative power, then we're not afraid of the unknown anymore. Part of what I do with quantum human design is I teach people how to remember how they create, because it taps them into their quantum creative power. You start to know how to use the light and deliberately point it towards what you want to be creating in the world. And you don't get lost in the details of, well, how am I going to do that? You don't get lost in the doubt. You know how to leverage that light as a creative force. If you've tried some of the more traditional personality assessment tools, let's say Myers-Briggs or even traditional human design or Enneagram, and you're feeling like it's good, there's something there in it for you, but it's also somewhat limiting, quantum human design teaches you how to take back control over the story. It teaches you how to tell the story that you choose about your life so that you can create the life you were born to live, the life that fulfills the full potential of the story of who you are. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, talks about how the only thing you really have control over in your life is how you respond to life. So if you think about stimulus and response, most of us, when we have a stimulus or experience an event, we react. And that reaction is based on who we think we are, the stories we've told, the things our parents said about us, the things our teachers told us. It's also even influenced by your epigenes, your ancestral lineage, things that happened to your family and your family lineage generations before you even got here. What quantum human design does is it teaches you how to take back control over that gap between stimulus and response, so that you're not reacting anymore, but when you encounter a stimulus in life, and it can be something great and amazing or something that maybe isn't what you had planned or hoped for, quantum human design gives you the vocabulary and it gives you a path to understanding yourself well enough so that when you encounter a stimulus, you can consciously and deliberately choose what you're going to do in response to that stimulus. When you take back control over what's in that gap between stimulus and response, you regain your control over your creative power. And you can start pivoting and being sustainable and building a life that's rooted in well-being, a life that reflects the true value of who you are. When you learn to take back control over what's in that gap between stimulus and response, you get to choose your response. But there's another thing that happens. Because this is really not just stimulus response, it's actually a segment in a feedback loop. When you start to be able to control or deliberately choose your response to stimulus, you also start to change what stimuli are going to show up in your life. So now, instead of just randomly reacting, oftentimes with fear, to what's showing up, you're consciously choosing what you want to be creating. You're consciously choosing your response. And as you continue to consciously choose your response, what shows up starts to change. And the life that you're living starts to reflect the level of faith, alignment, and peace that you've created because you've gotten control over that story.